What's the story, Morning Glory? What is the word, Hummingbird? Thank you so much for clicking on my channel and for joining me for this review of Married at First Sight, Season 16, Episode 12, Getting to the Crust. Now, let's get to our residential doom and gloom couple, Eris and Jasmine. First, before we get into tonight's episode, I have to mention something from last week's episode that I completely forgot to talk about. So when Eris and Jasmine were celebrating their 1 month anniversary and they're having that dinner out in that beautiful pasture, field, garden, whatever it was, and Eris told Jasmine that I thought he said that they can revisit the conversation of being intimate after decision day, which made no sense to me because whether or not that conversation is even had is going to depend on what happens on decision day. Y'all would have to want to be together to have a discussion about intimacy after decision day. But in fact, he said that, or she reiterated back to him that, oh, so we can be intimate after decision day. And I forgot to talk about this last week, but why? If he's so unsure of being intimate with her now, how is he so sure that he's going to want to be intimate with her after decision day? That's what I didn't understand. That didn't make any sense to me. Number one, it depends on what happens on decision day. And number two, he's so adamant about not being intimate with her. So what's going to change after decision day? So that whole conversation confused me. Okay, moving on. So in this week's episode, they meet with Dr. Pepper. And Jasmine talks about the issues that they've been having, the lack of attraction, and they decide that in order to get past this whole lack of attraction issue, they need to get deeper. They need to connect on a much deeper level, and they need to be able to connect intimately on an emotional level. And Dr. Pepper, she analyzes Eris and comes to the conclusion that because he's had so many people die on him, he's lost a lot of, close friends and relatives, I'm assuming, namely his father, that he has this fear of, I guess, abandonment, this fear of people leaving him, people dying on him. And so instead of running to get closer to people, he runs away from closeness because he's worried about people not being there anymore. And so he would rather just avoid emotional intimacy, emotional connections altogether. And I do agree with that. I do agree with that in part, but I'm going to put my little twist on it, my little mix on it as well. I think also with Eris, and I've said this before, I think also with Eris is that because he's never been in a serious relationship, he's never been in love, and it's stemming from the whole thing of being afraid of being really close to someone, but because he's never been in love and had that really serious connection with someone on a romantic level, he just doesn't know what to do or how to do it. He doesn't know. And and then in this situation, it's this pressure cooker situation of being on this show and being with a woman who immediately, told him how she felt, what she wanted from him. I think that it was just a little bit overwhelming for him. And so he's not able to, I think he's afraid of a lot of stuff. He's afraid of getting close. He's afraid of falling in love. He's afraid of breaking her heart. He's afraid of a lot of stuff. And this leads me to another point. One of the main issues that I have with this show is that they get broken people. Okay. They get these really broken people and they put them in this very weird, unique scenario of marrying a stranger. And then somehow they expect it to work. And I've said this every single season. Why do you have to get people who are so broken to do this experiment? Eris has a lot of issues that he needed to resolve before he married a stranger, before he married a non-stranger, before he moved into that step of becoming someone's husband and taking on the responsibility of somebody's heart. He needed therapy. He had a lot of things to get through. He has, his father passing away. I don't know if he ever really dealt with that on a professional level. His friend dying by suicide, other people in his life passing away, losing his father, and I think also his uncle within days. I mean, that's a lot. And he probably just went on with life like nothing was happening, not dealing with, the tragedy, the trauma, the devastation of all these things happening. And then he's supposed to be able to be ready to take on the responsibility of a marriage and of a whole nother person. Y'all, I don't get this show when it comes to that. Taking these really broken people, I don't understand. Anyways, so the conclusion is we have to try to get closer on a more intimate level. So that's what they try to do. So they have an exercise where they're supposed to ask each other questions that's going to elicit very deep responses and help you to get to know your partner on a much deeper level. We're going to be done with all this surface stuff. We're going to be done with just existing in this marriage. We're going to get deep. We're going to get down and dirty and dive into getting to know one another. So as he's asking her these questions, these really profound questions that the experts have obviously, pre-written for them, as he's asking her these questions to try to get to know her better, she's not giving any responses. She's just like, I don't know. We've already talked about that. I don't know what you want me to say. I don't know. I've never thought about that. And she even turns it around on him. He asked her a particular question, and then she was like, well, what is your response to that? Completely missing the whole point of this whole entire exercise. That you have to dig deep. If you said it before, say it again. If you don't know, figure it out. Say something. And Eris was like, I don't understand her because, she was the one herself that said in order for us to get through our problems, we have to connect on a much deeper level. And she's not answering any of these questions. But then also, he wasn't trying to help her. He wasn't trying to challenge her. She didn't want to answer a question. He just moved on to the next one. And at some points, he looked kind of bored. And I understand with Jasmine, the reason why she wasn't really, present in this experiment is because she's probably thinking, why even bother? He says he's not attracted to me. And she equates that with, he doesn't want nothing to do with me. He doesn't like me. He doesn't want to try with me. He doesn't want to be with me. So she's like, why even bother? Why does he get to know the deepest part of me when he doesn't even like me? He's not even attracted to me. I'm ugly to him. He's probably going to say no on decision day. So what's the point? And maybe that's why she's just so blasé about the experiment. This is the reason why I said in my last review, Jasmine, you might need to consider getting a divorce. Why go if you've checked out? Okay, it's one thing to be struggling and still wanting to be in it and still putting in the work. It's another thing when you're struggling and you've checked out. If you have checked out, Jasmine, it's okay, baby girl, get a divorce. Just tell them, get a divorce. I mean, Dominique did it with so much ease. Get a divorce and just stop the hurt and stop the pain. And I think maybe like a tiny bit of her probably thinks that she can somehow turn it around. And when I say turn it around, I mean there's a tiny bit of her that probably thinks that she can do something to make him fall into attraction with her. So the question that he asked her that she didn't want to answer or couldn't answer, and she turned it back to him, was the question was something about, have you ever had to forgive? Did you ever have a really difficult time learning forgiveness or forgiving someone? And he said that it was when his best friend died by suicide. He was so angry because he didn't understand why someone would take such a drastic act, knowing that it was going to hurt so many people that loved him, his family, his parents, his friends, and it affected him deeply. And he was so angry at that friend for so long, but in order to let go of that anger, he had to learn how to forgive his friend for doing what he did and beginning to try to understand what would lead someone to make such a drastic decision. And, understanding that this friend was probably in a whole lot of pain, probably feeling like there was no way out, et cetera, et cetera. And that was so personal, so like a very personal, private thing to share with someone. And Jasmine didn't even expound on it. And it didn't even give her any ideas to talk about her being in a similar situation. You know what I'm saying? She just was like, oh, okay. And that was it. She didn't ask any more questions. I mean, if someone told me something like that, number one, I'd be interested to know more. And number two, if I wasn't interested, I would have enough politeness and respect to ask a question or two before we moved on. Because for someone to share something like that, took a lot out of him. And I don't know if he shared this story 1,000 times before, or if this is the very first time that he's ever shared it. I don't know. But I would have enough respect for that person to, ask a little bit more questions, to somehow, be interested in what he just shared with me. But Jasmine wasn't. So then when they went on to the next question of, the question was, what worries you the most at the moment? And she was like, this marriage worries me. And the scene ended. That was the end of that. Jasmine's mother comes over. Okay, her beautiful mom comes over to specifically talk to Eris because Jasmine wasn't there. Y'all, I was a little bit confused about this meeting. So Eris talks about, the mother starts off with, is there anything that you want to talk about, or something to that effect? And I felt like she was trying to get a specific answer from me. Like she already had in mind what she wanted to talk about. And I think she wanted to talk about the lack of sex in the relationship. But she asked him a question and he responds with, yeah, Jasmine is just not sharing enough. She's not going deep enough. We have these exercises to do for us to get to know each other better. And she's just not going deep enough. And it was her that said that this is what we needed to do to get past our hurdle of not being close enough with one another. And so that's what we're doing. I'm putting in the work. I'm answering the questions. But when I ask her a question, she gives me absolutely nothing. And so the mom was like, well, you're just going to have to learn how to figure out how to pull it out of her. Oh, so it's his responsibility that she's lacking in opening up. It's his fault that she's not opening up enough because he doesn't know how to pull the information out of her, even though he's not a therapist or anything like that. So then the mom talked about them waiting to have sex until after decision day. And she says, and maybe I misheard y'all, but it felt like, I think she said, I think what she was trying to say was, you're going to be missing out on something because anything could happen. Something could happen and you'll never have that chance to be intimate with one another. And so y'all need to do it now. She didn't say this, but I think this is what she was alluding to. Something about, why wait until decision day? Anything can happen. So you might as well get it done now. I think that's what she was trying to say to him. And I was so confused. I was like, did she really say that? I was like, what? So they should go ahead and have sex only because something could happen and they may not get that chance ever again. What? Eris says that he's waiting for a deeper connection before they take that step. Then the mom says, well, both of y'all are overthinking it. The whole conversation to me was very counterproductive. I understand that Jasmine has checked out and she probably feels like, what's the point? But she's going to stick around just in case he changes his mind and wants to jump her bones. But I think that she has definitely checked out. But I think that even if you feel like it's not going in the direction you want it to go in, if you're going to stay, you should still give it your all. Don't stay and not do the work. Otherwise, you could just go home and not do the work and it won't make any difference. So if you're going to stay until the end, then put in the work. Give it your all, because you don't want to go through this and feel like, oh, if only I would have, if only I should have, I could have done this, I could have done that, woulda, shoulda, coulda. And then you're going to have all these regrets, because on decision day, he's going to say, well, if she would have just shared more with me, I would have, turned around. I would have looked at her differently. I would have felt differently about her. And then she's going to be like, oh man, I should have, taken advantage of all of those exercises they gave us to try to connect with them on a deeper level. I don't know. Moving on to Nicole and Chris. Moving on to Nicole and Chris. Nicole and Chris are doing great, y'all. Okay. They're doing great. They are our residential superstar couple. They can do no wrong. They're really into each other. They're doing the work. They're opening up. They're being transparent. They're following instructions. They're doing, even their meeting with Dr. Pepper, it seemed a lot shorter than everybody else's meeting with Dr. Pepper. It seemed like Dr. Pepper was like, well, y'all really don't need me. Y'all are doing great. in the intimacy exercise that they did after they met with Dr. Pepper, where they had to share something about themselves or share a lot about themselves, they talked about a shameful moment that you experienced. And Nicole gives this really heartbreaking story about lying to her mom about her cigarette burn, because she had let an ex-boyfriend burn her with a cigarette to prove her love to him. And her mom had seen the scar, and she lied to her mom and how she got that. And she felt very shameful that she would ever let someone do that to her. And, that shame led to her, of course, not wanting to tell her mom about it. And she was like, well, my mom knows now. But yeah, that was sad to hear. And he talks about feeling unworthy of love in the past. He says because Nicole said that she's never been able to open up to her partners. She's very closed off, because being vulnerable and open is a sign. She saw it as a sign of weakness. And so she's always had walls up. And Chris has been the complete opposite. Chris says he shares too much. He's open too much. He's too vulnerable. And it's never worked out for him. The women see it as him coming on a little bit too strong. And he's felt like, because I can't connect with anybody, even though I'm bearing my heart and soul to them, they still don't want to be with me. He felt unworthy of love. And Nicole tries to encourage him. You're worthy of love. I love you, blah, blah. So Nicole said that she's really worried about their love bubble is going to burst. And this fear, she recognizes that it's an irrational fear, because it's based on her past experiences with men. And so this fear that it's going to go bad with Chris has nothing to do with Chris or this relationship. It's just based on negative past experiences. But it's good that she recognizes that. Moving on to Kirsten and Shaquille. They have to get the gold star of the week for making the most progress, because they got it in. Okay, so they meet with Dr. Pepper. I don't want to spend too much time talking about Dr. Okay, they meet with Dr. Pepper. And Dr. Pepper asked about intimacy and closeness and all of that. And Shaquille said that they are improving in that department, because at first, Kirsten did not want to even kiss the man. But now they're at that point where not only does she want to kiss him, but she craves more kisses from him. And she talks about how one morning when he left to go to work, he was running late or something, and she was still in bed. And so he just kissed her on the forehead and left. And he thought she didn't even notice, but he got a text from her later saying, hey, when you left and you kissed me on the forehead, what's up with that? Why didn't you kiss me on the lips or something? And so, he realized that, okay, I got to do more. And Dr. Pepper told him, yes, don't overlook stuff like that. If that's what she wants and that's what she's expecting, make sure that that's what you do for her every single time. Don't ever be too busy, to give her the love and affection that she craves from you, that she wants from you. Okay, good point. So they talk about maybe the reason why Kirsten is so closed off, her parents divorcing at a young age, feeling kind of shameful about that her parents were no longer together, having to spend time in two different homes. This is what caused her to build up this wall and to kind of shut into herself. So she finally is opening up more, and we're getting to understand a little bit more of why she is the way she is. Okay, fine. I'm trying to get to the good stuff, y'all. So, So later on, I don't know what day this was, but later on we see them having dinner, and she's asking him for help on her logo for her real estate business. And so he's, doing some sketches, on how her logo could look like or whatever. And she says that kind of got her, kind of turned her on a little bit to see a man, at work in this like business mode that he was in, and it kind of did something to her. You know what I'm saying? It kind of got her all hot and bothered, which led to, okay, I don't know what day this was, but the next scene that we see is them doing the body painting. Okay. So he wanted to body paint her. Fine. So she comes home wherever she came from. She gets changed, and they do the whole body. And he did it with he was concentrating so much, and he was like really trying to do a good job and putting on this body paint on her, because normally when they do these type of exercises on Married at First Sight, they just try to slap some paint on one another. No, he had like a vision. Okay. When she got up on that chair or table, he had a vision of what he wanted to do to her body, of how he wanted to paint her body. And I guess all the concentration that he was putting in it and how seriously he was taking it, it kind of, it did some things to her. So after that, he comes out with a strawberry and whipped cream, y'all. And that moment, okay, when he was like walking up to her and he was like, "Do you trust me? Do you trust me?" And she was like, "Uh-huh, uh-huh." And then he put the whipped cream in her mouth, put the strawberry in his mouth, and they did this whipped cream strawberry kiss. The way he kissed her was so much intensity. Like you could just feel through your television all of his pent up desire for her, right? Because he kissed her with so much passion with that damn strawberry. And I was getting palpitations, okay? And I could, y'all, somebody go check on Kirsten and make sure she's okay, because it seemed like as they had, because, they walked into the bedroom together, and we found out in the next episode, because it showed us the clip, we find out that they did consummate their marriage. I'm assuming it was at this, body painting, strawberry whipped cream night. The way, like, you could tell that he has wanted this woman for so long. Let somebody please go do a wellness check, a welfare check on our girl Kirsten, and make sure that she is okay. Because man, y'all, the way he kissed her, he has so much passion built up in him that let's go. We need to go check on Kirsten, make sure she's okay. So they did great this week. They made a lot of progress. A whole lot of progress. They were moving mountains, and I'm just so proud of them. I'm so proud that Kirsten, was able to let down her guard and, try to connect with him on a much deeper level. She shared a lot about her childhood. She shared a lot of her body, and it's just, they did good. Whether it works out or not, she gave it her all. I feel like at this point now, whatever they decide on decision day, they both gave it their all. They both gave it their all. Okay, so yeah, I would have no complaints on whatever they decide to do on decision day. Moving on to Gina and Clint. Gina and Clint also did really well. So they meet with Dr. Pepper, and they talk about how so far they've been just focusing on having fun. And Dr. Pepper was like, well, that's not what makes a marriage, okay, because it ain't fun. And so they said, well, the reason why we don't want to get too deep is because the last time that we tried to get deep with one another, it was in Jamaica on our honeymoon, and that went drastically wrong. It went horribly. So we're trying to avoid these deep conversations and just have a good time. And so Dr. Pepper was like, well, I'm going to need y'all to dig deeper because we're running out of time. And if we're going to make a sound decision on decision day, you're going to have to give it your all. So they do what they're supposed to do. So they do. Now, at first, Clint was kind of like, if she doesn't want to talk about anything deep, I'm not going to push her. I'm not going to try to, pull anything out of her, because I don't want it to be like a Q&A kind of thing. Like I'm interrogating her. And Dr. Pepper was like, no, you're going to have to do that. Because for her to not volunteer information and her wanting you to ask her questions, well, that's her method of connecting. So if that's what makes her comfortable to get deeper with you and to give you more information on who she is, then that's what you're going to have. You're going to have to ask her the questions, no matter how uncomfortable it is for you. Okay, fine. So they do the whole Q&A exercise with the questions. They did well. I thought they did extremely well. Like I said, if they just, okay, I don't see any kind of, I see them growing closer, definitely, because Gina even said, or Clint said, I don't know which one, but Gina will hang out in his room because, they sleep in separate rooms. But Gina will go and hang out with him in his room, just to hang out with him, whatever, which is a big, big sign for me. That's a big step that they are getting better. And he's kind of like giving her space. He's kind of like letting her kind of take the lead on where this relationship goes. If they do decide to stay together on decision day, I have a strong feeling that they may have a really good chance in actually staying together for a long time, because they are extremely cautious and intentional in how they're moving. So if they do decide to be together, it's because they've put in the work and they've put in a lot of thought in making that decision. It's not just, oh, we're still hot and heavy for one another, so let's stay together, a few months more after decision day. or it's not because, we want to keep up appearances. We don't want to look like failures. So let's go ahead and say yes on decision day. I think that if they say yes on decision day, it's going to be because they really want to be with one another, because they are taking it very, 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 very slow and very, 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 very intentional. So when they were doing the Q&A, they answered all the questions. Nobody seemed bored. There was no trauma bonding. They were really having a conversation. They were really, each question led to a conversation, which is the whole purpose of the whole Q&A thing, is for the questions to lead to conversations, to get to know more and more, for the questions just to kind of have a life of their own, and not just, okay, share a traumatic experience. Oh, okay. My parents got a divorce. Okay, next question. No, you talk about the parents having the divorce, how it affected you, then the other person adds something, then you add something else, and it leads to conversations. So I was really, really, really proud of Gina and Clint. They answered all the questions appropriately. And also, they have a lot in common. They want a lot of the same things. They're both very ambitious people. They're both in sales. They're both about their money. They're both about their business. But they understand they have to make time for one another. They both want a family. And I love it when Clint talks about how he really wants to be a father, because he's mentioned it several times, that he really wants to be a father. He really wants to have children. And I love that. So Gina and Clint, they also get a gold star. Shaquille and Kirsten, they're at the head of the class this week, because Lord knows things can turn next week. But this week on tonight's episode, they're like, class valedictorian. Gina and Clint, they're like class salutarian. Jasmine, Eris, I'm sorry, you're going to have to repeat this grade. You're going to have to, summer school ain't even going to help. You're gonna have to redo the whole entire year. I'm so sorry. You're gonna have to do, it's a big fat F. You have to come back and do the whole entire year again. Thank you so much for joining me on this review of Married at First Sight. I really do appreciate it. I truly, truly do. The comments, the ratings, the views, I really do appreciate it. No matter how big or how small, if one person takes the time to come and watch me, I appreciate it. Appreciate it, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart. On your way out, don't forget to rate the video if you like this content. Go ahead and subscribe, and I will definitely talk to you later. Bye.